on the screen in Zoom. So if you are comfortable reading in English and that helps with tracking on the conversation, please do turn those on. And April, would you share a little bit about what else we can do for live translations?
Yes. Thanks, JP. Hi, everybody. I am so excited about this first call with all of you. So, I am going to share in the chat box right now a link to Microsoft Translator. So, if you just click on that link pretty quickly, we're going to have live subtitles that will be in Microsoft Translator. And you, when you log in, can pick your native language and they will be translated to your native language. So I'm turning on my microphone now. So if you just log in, I'm going to give everybody just a second. If you have any issues, let me know in the chat. Great. I'm seeing lots of people are logging in now.
So
there
this,
you will
sorry,
you
go
will
ahead.
be able to see everything that we are saying here on the video. You will be able to see that translated live to your language. And one option that I could recommend is you can make the screen, the screen with our pictures a little bit smaller, and then you could make this and have it right beside. So you'd be able to see us speaking while having Microsoft Translator just to the side of it to be able to read it in your native language if that is easier. And then as JP mentioned, you should see just right above our head, a live transcription closed captioning has been enabled. So that will allow you, if you would like, at the bottom of this Zoom screen to see what we are saying in English, if that helps you to understand it better. All right, lots of people are joining the link, so I think we are good.
Thank you, April. If you all have any questions at all throughout today's call or any of our future calls about the closed captioning that's available in Zoom or the live translation through the link that April provided, please let us know in the chat tool. Please continue to share your questions. If you have any challenges at all with using it, our team is here to help you as we go through the content today. We want to make sure everyone can access this as much as possible. And these live translated subtitles can be very helpful to supplement what you're hearing from our guest today in English. All right, everyone. If you, again, have any questions, use the chat. Please let us know. And with that, I want to introduce our two guests and turn over the rest of our time to them. April and myself will be here. So if you have questions about what we're going through today or questions for our guest hosts, we'll be highlighting those throughout the call. And of course, we'll save time at the end for questions from all of you. We have quite a large number of people attending and they're still logging in. So we're super excited for the energy behind this call. Thank you for being here. And it's a wonderful way to welcome our very special guests. Hudson and Emily, Hudson Santana and his operations director, Emily, are here to share with us, as you saw in the email, about what it means to really build a business to at least level 2 as a millionaire real estate agent, to follow that model that we know so well. And so I wanted to just acknowledge that Hudson and Emily have built an amazing team. Hudson is not only a mega agent team, a rainmaker and leader, but also a market center operating principal, as well as an icon in our company. And he hails from Brazil, so his story is quite amazing. If you have time to read and learn about Hudson, please do so. His story is quite inspirational. But Hudson, I'd like to turn over to you and Emily to introduce yourself and take us away. Thanks again for being here.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, we're super excited for the opportunity. We love the idea that KW is spreading all over the world. Again, I am from Brazil, so I moved to the US in 2001 and was able to join Keller Williams as my first real estate company and really follow the model. And, that provided us a really great platform to build a great business. So Emily, let's get the ball rolling. Can you share the screen, the slide?
Yeah, I am trying to, but oh, there it is. Okay, perfect.
Awesome, guys. All right, so if you guys haven't read the MREA, but you should, but the whole idea is how to net $1 million, right? That's why if you do that, you're going to be a millionaire real estate agent. In the beginning, your goal is to get to $1 million in gross commission income, but eventually your goal should be to net $1 million in gross commission income. So let's get started. And for those of you that don't know me, Emily and I work together. We're Santana Properties team. Our team started in Boston, Massachusetts, specifically in the Cambridge area, 2012. Last year, we did a little over 150 million in volume, almost $4 million in GCI. I also run a real estate development company. So my companies combined netted almost $8 million in income last year. North America Development is the other company I run. I love to talk about this because one of the things that I believe the most is how do you maximize your real estate business and how do you figure out your own niche? And so you can do one job and have multiple effects, right? Mm-hmm. So I do the same thing every day, and that allows me to build houses and to sell houses and to run a market center, right? But it's all the same job. So this is what it is. If you guys want to check out our company, it's santanapropertiesteam.com and northamericadevelopment.com. All right, so we have a very limited time, so I'm going to try to go as fast as I can. But again, guys, you can always reach out to us. We'd love to do these classes and talk to people directly. Feel free to follow me on Instagram and Hudson Santana RE. Okay, and then let's get started. So first thing you need to get into is doing the math, right? What does that mean to net $1 million, right? So if you do the math backwards, and everything is on the MRA, right? So if you do $1 million, again, depending on your currency, where you are, the MRA suggests a 42% profit margin, okay? So in our case, it would be, we would have to generate 2.380 in commission income, okay? Then you divide that by your average commission. Depending on where you are, you might be 2%, it might be 10%, not sure. In our case, our average commission, and this is a real number, is about 0.235% in each side of the transaction, whether we're doing a listing or whether we're doing a buyer, which means in order for us to net $1 million at that percentage, we have to generate over $100 million in volume, in sales volume, right? Our average price point used to be $850. So doing that math at $850 price point, we would have to sell 119 homes, right? 119 transactions to get to $1 million. Now, for some of you, you might think, wow, that is overwhelming. I could never do it, right? Or some of you might think, oh, that's a piece of cake. I've been doing this for a long time, right? So, but our goal here is to give you some pointers to get there, right?
Awesome.
So first thing is, and again, the whole idea of the MREA is, in my opinion, is that your goal is not to be a real estate agent. Your goal is to become a business owner, right? That's really what the difference between Keller Williams and most companies. Most companies train you to be an agent. Keller Williams trains you to be a business owner. So when we talk about this, don't hire your way up. There are goals to master each level, right? We want to make sure, and the thing that helped our team is that we always grow because we have more opportunities than we can handle. And that's what we're going to get into, why you should go from level 1 to level 2 and so on and so forth.
Hey, Hudson, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
What does that mean to not hire your way up? When you say don't hire your way up, what does that mean, if you don't mind sharing?
To me, it means that it's like that pill, right? That a lot of people think, oh, if I hire this company, I'm going to pay this amount of money, and then all of a sudden I'm going to have all this business. It really doesn't work that way. Or if I hire an assistant just because I don't have enough business to support an assistant, but I'm just going to hire one, and all of a sudden I'm going to have all this business, right? So like, in our view, it's don't hire your way up. Yeah. Work on your business, do your, focus on your database. And then when you have more opportunities than you can handle, then go ahead and hire the right person. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. We see that all the time. I brought on some agents because I like them. I think they'll bring me business, but I don't have enough business to feed that agent on my team. Or as you just said, I don't have enough business to pay for an assistant. So we focus on our business And by mastering the growth and the 3 L's, leads, listings, and leverage, we can
Yeah.
then earn the right to hire.
Exactly. And I don't know about other countries, but in the US, it's really cool to say that you're running a team, right? And the reality is a lot of people get caught up with that and they just focus on the idea of having a team. They forget that the whole idea of having a team is so you can eventually net $1 million in income, right? So don't do it backwards. Just focus on your database, do the most you can. And then again, when you get to a point where you have more opportunities than you can handle, then go start hiring. What does that mean to have more opportunities than you can handle? As an example, hey, when I started, I was running around, and Emily, you can show the first level, right? Which is, it's you. You're alone. It's you do everything. You're the person that installs the signs. You're the person that pretty much takes the photos or schedules the photographer. You're the person that puts the contracts together. You're the person that does everything. In the beginning, it's totally fine. But what happens is you start getting momentum. You start getting traction, right? And what happens is eventually, JP calls me and JP calls me all excited to say, hey, Hudson, I heard about you from a friend of mine. I would love to talk to you about selling my home. And I'm so busy installing a sign and that I actually forget to call him back. And I only remember the next week. And all of a sudden what happened? Well, I called you, but I had this other friend and all of a sudden I hired this other friend, right? And that's when like, hey, I literally have more opportunities than I can handle. So it's time for me to leverage something.
Or in Hudson's case, him and his wife were covering showings for each other because they were busy.
Literally, it was, just so you guys know, and I don't advise that to anybody, but I worked at one real estate company. She worked at another real estate company because she is the one that encouraged me to get into the business. But she basically said, yes, I want you to be a realtor, but I don't want to work with you, right? I want our relationship to be a loving relationship, not a professional relationship. But eventually it got to a point where she was so busy, she couldn't show houses. She would call me and say, hey, can you meet a buyer at a certain house? And I worked for a different brokerage. Don't do it. It's completely illegal. Don't do it.
But that's when they decided to start the team.
That's when Santana Properties was born. Okay, because we're like, we can't do this. We have to get together. And by getting together, now we were able to leverage each other and grow the business. So let's focus on the things that you should master at this level, right? And again, remember, level one, it's you. You are the marketing person. You're the transaction person. You are the sign installer. So first thing is you're going to master your scripts, role play, basically your lead generation. And again, lead generation is different for a lot of different people. Lead generation is still my primary source of income to this day. And just so you know, I run a team in 2 different locations. I personally sold 60 houses in Boston last year while living in Miami. How I was able to do that? Because every day, first thing I do when I'm not teaching a class or talking is look for deals. So I do my own lead generation every day. And Emily knows this. Every time we talk, we know that there's one thing I can do that nothing else would matter is get my lead generation done, find one deal, and that deal leads into other things, right? So for you guys, it should be, if you're a new agent, 3 hours every day, focus on bringing on the business to your team, right? So that means before these 3 hours, you need to practice. You need to know what you're going to talk about. Because what happens is when your friend refers JP to you, you should know what you're going to talk about, right? Especially if you're a newer agent. You should know how to get him to come to your office, right? Or how to get him to join a Zoom call with you. So you can go. And then when you get to that Zoom call, you should know how to convert him as a client. Does that make sense? And again, at this level, and depending on where you are working with buyers and sellers. You're basically doing everything. Mm-hmm. So first level goal is personal productivity. It's how can you be the most productive agent? Does that make sense?
And I think the hardest thing about this is that it's so hard to hold to do 2 things, to either hold yourself accountable It's way easier to hold other people accountable. And it's also really hard to have grace and like be kind to yourself. It's way easier to do that for other people. And so living between that balance of those two things is probably the hardest piece of this step.
Yeah. And I don't know if that opportunity is available outside of the US, but that's where MAPS coaching can really help you. On part of my story is that when it was my wife and I juggling, the first thing I did is I actually went to a bold class. It was called a bold leadership at a time. And I was recommended to this coach, and he's my coach to this day. So even when I was an individual agent, I had somebody to help me follow this model and hold me accountable. But for those of you that don't have MAPS coaching, you have your market center, your team leader, your productivity coach, your OP. All those guys have an incentive to help you build and become as good as you can, right? So don't be afraid to reach out to them. The other great thing about Keller Williams, you have me, you have Emily, you have JP, you have anybody that you can contact, and we have this culture of sharing, which is very different than most companies out there.
Yeah, especially outside of the US and Canada. And it was this way years and years ago. The real estate industry isn't known for agents sharing and cooperating. And Keller Williams changed that in the United States. And all of you are changing it in your marketplace. So exactly as Hudson said, lean on all of those leaders, and don't forget partnering up with your fellow agent and creating role play partnerships and practice groups. That's a huge part of what built the millionaire real estate agent businesses all over the United States, where agents like Hudson willing to get together with other agents and ask, hey, how are you doing this? Let's compare notes. Hey, you know what? I'll call you in the morning. We'll practice a role play or a script. So don't be afraid of that. It may feel unusual, and that's why it'll work, because no one else in your marketplace is doing it.
And this call is a great example of that, right? This is not something that they're writing me a big check to do. It's that I have gotten to where I am because of the help of everybody within our Keller Williams family. So the fact that when JP invited me, I was super excited to be able to share and to help other people, because that's the difference with this company.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so this is the thing that I want you guys to understand, right? Especially if you're starting out, but this service, it could help JP, it could help anybody. Life, the most important thing for you to be successful is to figure out the choices that you make, okay? So it really is all about choices. I love this little picture because it's a kitty cat seeing herself as a lion. Does that make sense? And that's how you have to be. So, but because the idea is, who do you have to become to be a successful person, right? Or to be a successful realtor, to be a millionaire real estate agent? Who do you have to become? What choices do you have to make every day? And some of you that have met me before, I love talking about this because your choices are super important. And it's not the big choices. It's the small choices. It's really what you choose to eat, what time you choose to wake up, your attitude, right? Whether you choose to lead generate or you decide to procrastinate on that. Does that make sense? So think about that. Think about who do you have to become a real estate, millionaire real estate agent.
And one thing that Hudson always reminds me about this is to look at the people around you, identify their strengths, identify your strengths and your weaknesses, and see where you guys can link up to be that for each other.
Yeah, one of the best exercise that I love to do when we have time is usually on a group like this. We ask like, hey, who reads the most, right? And maybe JP reads a book a month, and maybe Emily and I don't read any books a month, right? So we can figure out from him, hey, what do you do to get to that level? Does that make sense? But maybe he has a hard time waking up early, and I wake up between 5:30 every morning. Maybe I can give him some tips on that. And then within our circle, we can figure out how to become better just by using our own circle. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Oops.
So this is, we talk about who you have to become, right? The question is, when do you grow, right? Is it when you're doing everything? And it says here, right? You did it because you could handle, right? How can you handle more? And I love this little graphic here. There's a little picture because it shows. I mean, that's what level 1 looks like. You are everything. And you have to be as good as you can on everything. However, you're not going to be the best at all those tasks because you're doing, a bunch of different things, right? So this is when we start talking about, again, with the premises of I have more opportunities than I can handle. Now I'm starting to drop the ball. I forgot to put that listing on the website, or I forgot to install a sign, or I forgot the contract that had to be signed, or I forgot to follow up with that lead. Does that make sense? This is when you start thinking about, okay, what are the tasks that I should start considering giving to somebody else? And this is literally the biggest fear that we encounter, and I believe most team leaders encounter, when people get to this point where they're so busy because they're doing so well and the balls start to drop, but they are so accustomed to doing everything that they can't give it away. Mm-hmm. They can't give it away. And by the way, one tip of hiring a great person is that person that literally takes it away from you, right? It's not the person that you try to give it to them and they give it right back, right? We call it a job give it backer. That's not what you want at all. What you want is somebody, as an example, if Emily sees me doing a spreadsheet, it'll probably drive her nuts. She'll probably say, no. Like, just go do something else. I'll take care of it. Because what she can do with a spreadsheet in 10 minutes would take me 3 hours to figure out. Does that make sense? So the concept of this is that you need to start thinking about how can I hire somebody to help me, okay? So let's move on to the next slide.
I just have a quick question, Hudson, maybe you could address about this. What's the difference between being overwhelmed and potentially disorganized and having too many opportunities? Because I think there is a distinction there.
Yeah, again, the idea to me is that having too many opportunities of being disorganized is a choice, right? It's literally like, I don't have time. And this is, I'll give you a great example. One of the hardest things to give away when you're a realtor is a listing, right? Because it's leads, listings, and leverage, right? But listings are the heart of your business because you get to advertise, you generate all the business. But to me, what was happening is I got to a point where I would literally show up in an appointment and pull up my laptop in front of it like 5 minutes before or 10 minutes before and try to run some numbers to get an idea of what this house is about, because I had no idea. I'm like going from appointment to appointment, and guess what? Was I providing the best service to that client or to my team? No, because I wasn't prepared. I didn't know anything about the house. I was literally going on talent, right? And we, I think it's Gary that talks about, what's the word? It's time on task versus talent on task, right? And time on task beats talent on task every time. You want somebody that's consistent versus just somebody that's working out of talent, right? Mm-hmm. So this idea of being overwhelmed versus you're just disorganized is that, like, hey, I am busy. I am doing things that are generating income. But because I'm not willing to let go, I'm not generating more income. And we see this all the time in KW. Agents that are really amazing, but they stay at this level because they're not willing to let go. And what happens is they become afraid that, oh, if I have more business, I'm gonna be even more overwhelmed. When the reality is, if you had more business and more leverage, you actually have a much better lifestyle, and therefore you'd be able to produce more. Does that make sense? All right, so this is something, again, and we're only talking about level 1 and 2, but this is such a pillar, and it's such a difficult thing in general for somebody to do, is when do you hire your first hire, right? According to the MREA, your first hire should be an administrative assistant. Google is not going to be able to translate that one the way I pronounced it, right? So admin, you really want to hire somebody that's going to help you on administrative tasks, right? Why is that? Because what we believe is that your face-to-face or your one-to-one contact with your client is the most important thing. And it's the last thing you want to give away to somebody else. So as an example, if JP is hiring me, right? And again, I'm a one person and he's hiring me, the last thing I'm going to do is have somebody else talk to him. I want to be the person communicating with him because I want him to know and feel that I care about him, I value his business, and I'm on top of it. Does that make sense? So, but everything else, right? Whoever's installing the sign, whoever's taking the photos, whoever is doing the website or the marketing could be passed on. Does that make sense? So your first hire should really be an admin. And what are the things that you should look at, right? Again, what are your priorities when you get to this level? Pretty much the same. You're gonna learn and master your scripts, and you're gonna role play to become really good at it. You're gonna lead generate, which, by the way, that position should help you make sure that you get this done, right? Because that's the one thing that if you do consistently, nothing else matters, right? You're going to work with buyers and sellers, okay? Second level goal is to hire, right? So you're succeeding through others. The great thing about this is like when you talk about how I did my business is that it was actually Emily's mom was our first great hire. After going through a couple tries with different assistants, we actually were able to hire Terry, and she completely transformed our business. Literally, I'm not exaggerating, my wife and I, again, two agents, busy agents, but same thing. We weren't really level two. It was just like two level one people working together, right? We took a month off to Brazil and hired Terry and literally showed her the Keller Williams office and told her, hey, you need to figure this out, the administrative side of our business. And we put her in touch with Monica Reynolds, which has a great program in the US to train assistants. By the time we came back from our vacation, it was set up, and she would literally take it away from us. She wasn't saying, hey, I asked her to do something, she would give it back. She's like, no, let me handle this. Go meet more buyers and sellers. Within a year, we went from $600,000 in GCI gross commission income to over $1 million in GCI, right? In our first year, having a great admin. But just remember one thing, because we see this often. It might take you 3 or 4 hires to get to that one great one. But please don't give up on it. This happens all the time. I mean, honestly, Emily and I are going through this right now. Last year, we focused on hiring an expansion director. And we hired somebody that ended up being absolutely terrible. And because of other reasons, we basically gave up on that. Now, a year goes by, our transactions flatten, and we look back, it was like, see, we gave up on the system instead of just, the person. Does that make sense? And that's happened so often. Don't be discouraged. The idea is, hey, as an example, what happened to us last year, we know exactly what we need to look for now with that position, right? And it might take a couple others to get to that great hire, but every time that we go through it, we take it as a learning experience, and you make sure you just don't make that mistake again. And by the way, hire slow, fire quick, right? That's the idea. You will know within the first couple weeks if this person is the right person. So don't be afraid to move on. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Go ahead, Emily.
No, that was my question. How do you know?
Yeah, and again, like talking about this, we talk a lot about this in the US. It's hire talent. And to me, talent is somebody that takes the job away from me, period. That's what, as an example, let's use this. And JP, if you don't mind, I'm gonna use you. You called me or you emailed me to do this presentation, correct?
Yeah.
What did we do? Did we give it back to you, or did we prepare everything on our end and we showed up prepared to do the job?
No, I mean, more than probably a lot of our speakers, you're like, no, we've got it. In fact, I have Emily and we're going to take care of this. And then you guys can let us just go and teach. Like, you very leveraged for us.
Yeah. So the question is, if you need a speaker again, would you consider us?
Absolutely.
Right? Like, and that's how it should be. It's not like, imagine this, because you're going to come across this. JP asked me to speak. Hudson, I'm doing this thing that's very special. And I would be like, okay, when is it going to be? You know, and then he's going to get back tomorrow. You know, he already said it on the email, but then I was like, oh, when? Because I didn't read the email. And then it's like, well, you know, what do I need to do? And then you're like, well, you need to talk about this. And then, you know, and I keep giving back the job to him. Oh, at one point, he's going to realize, man, I should have just done this presentation myself, because the time I spent trying to explain it to them, I could have put this together and I could have delivered. Does that make sense? And that's the whole point. If you're going to hire somebody to go install the signs, they need to figure it out. Like, just show them where the signs are and what it needs to say, and have them contact the seller, have them coordinate, have them be on time, but if they have to give it everything to you, clearly you don't have what we call talent. Does that make sense?
Like the balloon example, Hudson.
And again, when we talk about talent, okay, we're not talking about in general. We're talking about that specific task that we're looking for. Does that make sense? I am talented in a lot of things, and I am absolutely not talented in a bunch of other things. As a matter of fact, I interviewed with 3 different Keller Williams teams, and none of them hired me. Literally, they didn't hire me. And I'm friends with all of them to this day, you know, but the reality is, was I what they were actually looking for? Maybe not. One of them, I know for a fact I wasn't. Does that make sense? So, but because none of them hired me, I had to go and create the team on my own and figure it out. Does that make sense? So this is the thing about hiring talent. Make sure that they don't give the job back to you. You need to get somebody that's going to help you take that out of your plate, so you then can go meet more sellers and more buyers. And one quick exercise, guys, it's literally put together a smiley face, put together a sad face, and put a line in the middle. It's as silly as it sounds, but do this. Figure it out. Or if you don't know what you do every day, put that next to you blank, okay? And spend your whole day. Every time you're doing something that you don't like doing, put a sad face on, okay? Every time you're doing something that gets you excited, put a smiley face on. Maybe going to a networking opportunity gets you excited. Great, put a smiley face on. Maybe going to a listing appointment gets you excited, right? But maybe installing a sign, you know, you don't like doing it. Put the sad face. Because at the end of the day, your first hire should be the person that's going to take as much out of your plate. And that's a good way for you to figure out, what kind of attributes do I need for this person? Does that make sense? If you are doing you love marketing, don't hire a marketing person. Does that make sense? Because you enjoy doing it, you're going to do well. Even it might not be the best, but you're still going to do a better job because you're excited about it. Give away initially the things that you don't like doing. But remember, you're not going to be able to give away lead generation. You're not going to be able to give away the client interaction in the beginning, right? Eventually you will, but we don't really recommend you doing that, because we really believe that the client interaction is the most important thing in the beginning. Eventually you get to do that. As an example, when I go, we deliver pies to our clients during Thanksgiving season. I'm not joking. Like 3 people that I deliver, I was wearing this t-shirt in Boston delivering a pie. They literally thought that I worked for Uber or something, because I showed up with a pie. They had no idea who I am, you know, but Ashley or Victoria or Carlos sold them a house, and they were thankful for them, but they didn't know who I was. Does that make sense? Which is totally fine. And that's the cool thing about, eventually it becomes bigger than you. Does that make sense? How much time do we have? I'm kind of
We got about 22 minutes left in the hour. So
perfect. Guys, this is a really big one for me. Okay, I truly believe in this, which is you gotta create bigger circles. And again, Nothing in life that is easy is good for you, right? Or pretty much anything in life that is easy, it's not going to be good for you. So creating bigger circles. What does that mean? Here's a question. Who do you look up to, right? Who do you surround yourself with? Emily, you can go on to the next one, right? This is the concept that I want you to understand, right? If you're going to create a business, right? And this is your circle. So we call it your world. So like, this is my world, right? And of course, there's families, there's friends, there's a lot of other stuff, but we're talking about business here, right? So in my world of business, I have the Santana team in Boston, I have the Santana team in Miami, and I have North America development, okay? And I also have market centers and other things, but these are the big things for me. I need to create my world big enough so these companies and these people can fit in within my world. Does that make sense? Which means I need to keep making this world bigger. I need to keep making my circle bigger. So one of the reasons why, here's a good example. One of the reasons why I'm doing this call for you guys is because I became good friends with JP's wife. And therefore, she's in Austin, Texas. She's an amazing team leader. At the time, she was a top listing agent. We met at a conference. Well, she introduced me to her husband, who happens to be heavily involved in Keller Williams worldwide. Because of that, now I have this opportunity to be on this call with you guys. And to me, why is this a great opportunity? Because I get to meet amazing people that are really successful throughout the world. What else could I be doing with my time, right? But that only happened because I took myself out of my office and I went to family reunion. And instead of being at the bar at the hotel, I was actually engaging and interacting and trying to meet as many people as possible. Does that make sense? So because of that, I have a bigger circle of people that are influential, that are successful, that are positive. Does that make sense? That I get to learn from. So one of the reasons why I moved to Miami is that I was pretty successful in Boston. But Miami is a city where I like to joke that nobody dreams about living in Boston. There's no child that wakes up in the morning and says, my dream is to live in Boston. You could dream to go to Harvard or MIT, right? But pretty much everybody dreams of owning a property in Miami or living in Miami at one point, right? It is like, so when you walk around here, there are so many uber successful people that to me, it was a huge piece. And my circle became much bigger just by being here and being intentional here. Does that make sense? So you have to have this concept of creating a bigger circle. So hopefully this is good information. JP, anything you want to add to this?
Oh my gosh, so many ahas. And I know we're going to have a few questions as well. So I want to respect the time. Are we good to go into Q&A, Hudson, or do you want me to?
Yeah. So let me just go over very, very quickly of some common mistakes that people make. So common questions is when, how, and how to pay. The pay, I would encourage you guys to talk about your OPs and TLs in your specific regions and countries, because I don't know how it works there. When we already covered is when you have more opportunities than you can handle, okay? And the how, follow the MREA. The book is there. I'm sure you can translate it to whatever language you're in, but again, your TL, your OP can help you with that on when it's time. But use your market center as your support system until you get to that point. Does that make sense? Common mistakes, again, not paying people enough. People think that by paying the minimum, you're going to get the most. It's not about that. It's about how do you get the most, right? Or how do you pay the most, you get the most. Does that make sense? A question that I like to talk about this. Now, again, I'll use JP as an example. JP, if Bill Gates walked into your office right now and said, JP, I want a job. And he said, but the thing is, I need you to pay me $1 million a year. Would you hire him?
Because I know he's worth it, right? Yeah.
It's Bill Gates. You would sell your house, borrow money from your mother, right? Like you would call Gary and knock on his door until he landed you the money, right? But it's Bill
Exactly.
Gates. You know that just by having him on your organization, you become a worldwide organization, right? And that's what I want you guys should think about. Again, going back to talent, it's a great example of talent, right? And again, a lot of people forget about training. When I talk about training, just think about this very quick. Take 3 steps back to take 10 steps forward, okay? Yes, you're gonna have to slow down to train somebody, but by doing so, you're basically, it's kind of like you're engaging to then you're gonna speed up so much faster. Does that make sense? So anyway, I'll stop at that. Hopefully there's some questions. Oh, and this is the last thing that I love to put it out there. How do you make more money, guys? There's 3 options, okay? You can increase your price point, huge thing. The service you do for a $300,000 property is pretty much the same that you're gonna do for a $3 million property. So think about that. You can increase the number of transactions, or you can increase your fee, okay? How do you get to do all of that? It's when you are worth it, right? So you have to be worthy of that fee or of that, again, only when we're talking about how much you charge. It's all about the service that you're providing. If you're providing more value and service than others, you get to charge more. So anyway, this is, hopefully we gave you guys some good information. We have all my info here. Feel free to contact us. I'd love to hear from you guys, especially feedback, good, bad, ugly, so we can do better next time.
Hudson, thank you so much. Emily, thank you for walking us through these slides. We're going to come back to this slide. Emily, do you mind if we go back 1 slide? I love these last 2 points you're making here, Hudson. If you go back 1 slide, you're in these 3 options to increase your opportunity to make more money. I think I know the answer, Hudson, but I'm going to ask you as the expert, which one of these 3 do you have the most control over if I wanted to increase my money immediately?
Whew. That's a good question.
It seems like number of transactions possibly, because we can't control the market, and then you have to build value to get your fee higher. So I don't know. Do you think it's just the number of units you're doing?
I honestly think that it really has to do with the individual. I mean, the number of transactions is a great option. I will say price point, I would argue that most people have the ability to increase their price point, including us, okay? And we usually don't do it because of our circle. And again, remember, if you live on a $300,000 home, you're usually gonna be selling around $300,000 homes. I'm not telling you go buy $1 million home. I'm just saying, if that's your circle, if all your friends own $300,000 homes, that's pretty much what you're gonna sell, right? Which means if you're hanging out with people that own $5 million homes, they're gonna hire you the same way. I promise you, they're not hiring you because you sold this many homes last year. They hire you because they know you and they trust you and they believe you can get the job done. The home is the most important asset somebody owns, and it's the most emotional asset, usually. So they're really only gonna give it to somebody that they know and trust that is gonna take care of it. And who else? As an example, if I were to sell a home in Austin, Texas, the first person I would think was Jen, JP's wife, because I know and I trust her. And I don't expect her to be the one doing, but she's going to be saying, Hudson, call so-and-so, right? And I'm going to trust her. I don't necessarily care how many homes that person has sold. It's more because now if Jen is saying that that's the person, I'm going to go for it. Number of transactions is the same thing, right? You can always do more transactions because of maybe your area, your price point. And again, going back to the fee, it literally is whatever number you agreed upon. And if you provide that value, people are going to do it. Here's an example, and this is where the world is going, at least in the US. The real estate agent's value used to be, I can find you houses. In the US, no realtors can find you houses better than the KW app or any other app. Okay, I mean, the buyers can see the houses, they come on the market. And by the way, if I'm a buyer and I'm looking for a 3-bedroom, I'm gonna see that before my realtor because my realtor is helping 10, 20 other people, right? But what is the value? As an example, we provide staging, right? We have our own staging company. with our own full-time stager. We have our own marketing team with our own full-time marketing director. We have, right? So the value, we get to charge more because of those services. So when I present to the seller and I show what we do for what we get paid for, is different than the person that just goes in with the lowest commission. Does that make sense? So you should think, and that's probably what you guys are going to hear a lot from Gary going forward. It's what else are you doing value-wise? So.
Yeah. And it starts with just simply your knowledge of the market. Even if I don't have services set up at all, I'm a single agent and the portals are getting properties in front of people. Where do we show up? It's exactly as you're saying, Hudson. I know my market. I'm actively in it. I'm the one actually listing and selling with people. So coming back and being able to provide that human insight and knowledge that you can't get from a website, not to mention your circles. I love that. You've grown your circle, so you know people who might be looking to buy or sell. You know people that might help the client buy or sell. And so your value is your circle as well as your experience. It doesn't matter how good the portals get as long as you're there to help that person through the biggest transaction they'll probably make in their life.
Yeah, the portals are never going to know that the next door neighbor has a pit bull or a loud dog that annoys all the other neighbors, right? But if you're that local expert, you might know, and you say, hey, this house is worth more than that house because that house is right next to two people that have this stuff, and it really affects, and you don't want to live there. Where on this side, all the landscaping are cleaned, all the neighbors take care of their homes, right? Therefore, it has more value, but you're not going to see that on Google. Does that make sense?
Emily, do you mind if we go back to that one more slide to the steps that you guys outlined here? In terms of common questions, I love this. This is exactly right. And I think you addressed it beautifully, Hudson. When you think about pay, it is different in every market. A couple of basic things. You're paying that first administrative assistant on probably a salary, right? Not a portion of the commission, correct? So the structure is typically a set salary. Is that right?
I believe that that person should have a set salary because that type of job is better for somebody that prefers security, right?
Yep.
However, I also believe that that person should have a bonus incentive from each transaction, because what I don't want to happen is I hired Emily, he's all excited, and then all of a sudden, because I hired her, I used to have 5 listings every month. Now I was able to literally double it. And then now she's going to be overwhelmed, discouraged because she's getting the same pay, doing twice the work. How often do you hear that from people? Oh, I work for this company and they fired so-and-so. Now I get twice the work and I get paid the same. Yeah. Right. And so what we do on our team is every admin person or every operations person, we're changing that language, is getting a bonus per transaction. So there's an incentive. So instead of being, uncomfortable, they're going to be excited that, hey, Hudson sold another house. Does that make sense?
Really smart. Gary teaches us that even at KWRI, which is filled with mostly W-2'd or salaried employees, he says we all work off the agent's commission, meaning if they don't sell a house, we don't get paid. So you have to think of yourself as incentivized to help agents sell more houses. And so your first admin, I think everyone needs to walk away if you're in this process and think about the way we incentivize people financially is really important. And you're thinking of the long term, which is if I bring on an admin and take on that cost, by managing my money and leading with revenue, I need to see that cost actually have a return. And that means more production. And if the admin understands they're incentivized to see you make more money and close more units, it's a win-win, right? So salary with a bonus based on transaction growth. I love that. When you talk about the win, I love this, and I want to go back to it and make sure everybody hear it. You literally said when you're deciding what to hand over and when to hand it over, you first need to have a list with the happy face and the sad face. And as you're going about your day, with the exception of lead generation and meeting with your clients, everything else that makes you unhappy, put it on the sad face side. And then as you hire admin, give them all the sad faces. Mm-hmm. I love that. And then
that's who you look for. That's how you decide who you're
that likes those things.
If you hate marketing and dealing with all that stuff, then hire someone who's really good at that. But Hudson loves that. So that was one of the last admin hires we made.
I love that. Now, the other question on when you hire, and you said this, and I want to just really put a pin on that point. You know your numbers, and you're using the business growth to define, do I have the money to hire an admin? Am I doing so much that things are falling through the cracks, or I'm forgetting to call clients? And that tells us, yes, we're doing everything we can, and things are starting to fall apart. And Emily raised a great point that could be disorganization, but by knowing your numbers, how much production you're doing, what that generates for you, what you want to see if you bring on an admin, the number you want to hit, your goal, that's higher production based on hiring an admin. I think if you had that plus your sad face, happy face analysis, I don't know what else you need in order to decide when to hire. Is there anything we're missing?
And one huge misconception that we see, especially in the US, I don't necessarily think in other countries, at least in Brazil, people don't think annually so much, but here everybody thinks annually. So let's use an example of $50,000. Let's just think that one admin would average salary would be $50,000. Most people in the US think, oh my God, it's a $50,000 commitment. And therefore, like, I don't have $50,000 in my bank account. Therefore, I'm not going to hire, or I'm afraid to hire. Well, the reality is, I don't know the math, but let's assume that 50,000 divided by 12 is 3,500. Yeah. Okay. You don't have to have $50,000. Really, what you need to have is about 3 months of that salary in place to make sure that you can afford that person, right? Because if you're literally hiring somebody to take some work so you can do more work, therefore, that person is going to pay for herself. Does that make sense? Or himself?
I love that.
That's really the idea.
This was a slide we had from another class, but I just pulled it up. I know that you've talked about this. I don't know if you want to go into it now.
Yeah. I mean, yes, another point that I want to make, at least in the US, the most expensive hire you can make is a real estate agent. Period. Hands down. You know why? Because according to the MREA, you're most likely going to pay up to 50% of your income to that agent, which means it's very expensive to hire an agent. So if you follow the MREA model, like, the last hire you're going to make is going to be an agent, right? So where an admin, you're hiring somebody on a fixed cost, again, according to our way of doing it, with a bonus per transaction, which means it's a fixed cost. It only goes up if your transactions go up. So again, if we're selling 50 houses a year, right? You're going to do the math on 50 houses, and you're going to figure out that salary according to that. Anything above that, with that bonus, right? You're generating more income than what you're really paying off to that admin. With an agent, anything that comes from that income, you're giving that person half. It's a lot of money. Does that make sense? So when we go through these classes, you're going to understand, if you follow the MREA, that eventually you give up the buyers. Eventually you give up the listings, but the last thing you want to do. That's why, honestly, to this point, I still sell houses. My system's a little different. I sold 60 listings last year. Imagine the income. That's over $1 million in income that I generated. Yeah. But I have so much help, right? That it's so hard for me to give that away, especially when I get to do it from another state. Does that make sense?
Going from level 1 to level 2 is really about building a foundation, organizing your business, creating scalability, or the ability to grow so that it's not on quicksand or soft ground, as we say. And then you earn the right into the other levels, which could include the mastery of lead generation so that you can feed opportunities to other agents. But if you're not ready to do that, then don't add that creativity that on top of a bad foundation. You've got to have that structure. Hudson, Emily, we have 2 questions that came in, and then we'll close out our call. These are pretty straightforward. One of our attendees asked, how do you, Hudson, put time aside specifically for training and enriching yourself? What's your growth plan? Or not what your growth plan is, but how often do you have that and put that into your calendar to go train and grow yourself?
I pretty much travel, other than COVID, that made it a little different, but I travel every month to a conference, a class, or other than when my schedule, as an example, we had our team over to Miami, so it kind of screw up things a little bit. But usually my time is every morning, wake up early, I go for a 20-mile bike ride, then I read a book, or I do that while reading a book, listening to a book. So I'm always listening and learning. You know, I follow the CEO podcast from Gary, which is amazing.
Think like a
And it's always about this. I mean, I'm very intentional about talking to people that are doing things bigger and better than I'm doing. So it's pretty much a daily thing. And it's a very intentional thing because I need to create a bigger world. When I do that, Emily benefits and everybody else on my team benefits. And as the leader, that's your obligation. And by the way, for those of you that are buyer's agents or listing agents or are part of teams, honestly, you heard me. I only started my own team because I didn't have the opportunity. People didn't want to hire me. I promise you, it's the hardest thing to do is to go do on your own. So if you can join another successful team, I am on Gary's team. Does that make sense? So it's still not me. I'm still part of his team. He gets a cut every time I sell a house. Does that make sense? And I have a bunch of other responsibilities. So I hope that answered the question.
No, I think it's beautiful. Once a month, at least something that you go to, whether it's virtual or in-person conference, a morning habit of reading and exercising, of course, and for a lot of people, time to meditate or connect with your faith is obviously part of that. The last question is a little different, and while we have you, I thought we'd ask and end our call with this. What kind of specific advice do you have for an agent who works primarily in a seller's market where there's not as many opportunities available? Do you have any thoughts just at a high level on working?
High level, I love, this is my favorite question. Go create your own inventory. I love that people are telling, oh, at least in the US, oh, there's no inventory. Since I got into real estate, I worked in Boston. Boston is one of the most historical towns in the US. You can't build houses there. You can only renovate pretty much. There's never inventory. There's never been inventory since I've been a realtor. What did I do? I started my own real estate development company and I create my own inventory, period. Figure it out. Go knock on doors. Don't use that as an excuse. Use that as an opportunity, period.
So double down on proactive prospecting based efforts where you're going out and taking the action to ask for the business, not so focused on marketing so that the business comes to you. You flip it and you proactively prospect, like door knocking and cold calling, things like that.
Yeah, and honestly, it's not even necessarily about prospecting based or marketing based. I'm just saying, figure it out. Like, don't use that as an excuse. Use that as an opportunity because people are not, like, the successful people were willing to do things that the unsuccessful people weren't willing to do. That's all it is. As an example, do you think there's a risk for me every time I go buy a house to build and to turn it into 3 or 4 houses? Absolutely. That's why most realtors are not willing to do it. But you know what? I had to figure it out because there was no other way. Does that make sense? Now, you know, and again, like that's the part where it differentiates me throughout most teams in the US. Our team doesn't sell the most homes, but if you add my real estate team with my development company, I'm probably one of the most, net worth people in the company as far as net income. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
But it's the same job. It is absolutely the same job. So my point is
that was born out of a struggle.
Yeah.
Like we didn't have, the inventory wasn't there. So you were forced to do this, but now it's opened all of these doors and created something that wouldn't have been otherwise if it wasn't difficult.
And now I get to control the market. I literally get to set prices in my area.
Really does.
People get really mad.
It's kind of annoying. Like sometimes I set a price and we're like, there's no way. And then he gets it and more.
Yeah.
in every challenge is an opportunity. Inside every single challenge, there is an opportunity. We just have to have the patience and the courage to look for it. You guys are evidence of that. Emily, if you'll share your contact info again on the screen, I want to let everyone head back to their day with that information so they can stay in touch with both of you. Thank you. This has been an awesome jam-packed hour of really great insight from two people that are building a massive business that everyone on this call is capable of doing regardless of market condition and where you are in your journey. So let's all give them gratitude in the chat and thank them for sharing their time. Also, if you can, for April and I's sake and for Hudson, share your ahas and let's collect these and we'll bring these back to this conversation, this community that we're starting with this agent growth call. Again, we're going to have these every month for you with a different guest. And a big thank you to Hudson and Emily for being our inaugural guests for this first call of the series. We thank you guys for being here.
And one thing I have to ask, please, 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 if you can take the time to write us an email with a review, good, bad, or ugly, that's what we do this for, because we want to do better. And again, any of you that have clients moving to Boston area or Miami, please think of us. We will take really good care of them.
Yeah, I'm looking at all of our guys in the Caribbean, Puerto Rico, and of course, Latin America. You guys, y'all love Miami. We talk about it all the time. Hook up with Hudson and his team. They will take care of you very well. Thank you guys again. And thank you all for being here and taking time away from your business. We know what that means to step out of your business and grow yourself. We applaud you for doing it. And we will see you guys next month in February and hopefully see many of you in Orlando at Fam Reunion. Thanks again, guys. Take care.
We'll be there.